President Trump's immigration crackdown has divided America.
The two people who got killed are largely responsible for their own deaths.
The U.S. government is spending an extra $75 billion on enforcement.
This is a campaign of fear, and it's a campaign of making America whiter and anti-immigrant.
They say they're targeting the worst of the worst.
These are all criminal, illegal aliens that, in many cases, they're murderers, they're drug lords.
Millions of people are being threatened with deportation.
People need to take responsibility for themselves and for decisions that they've made and the consequences.
And ordinary families can be ripped apart.
These are not the worst of the worst. These are the best of the best.
What happened?
Minnesota in early February, and Javier Abreu has been stopped by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE.
¿Qué dice? What happened? What happened?
He's scared to open the car door and is filming on his phone.
What happened?
2 people have already been shot dead by federal agents in Minnesota.
Okay. ¿Qué hice? Voy a salir. No me jale, que voy a salir. Yo estoy enfermo de los riñones.
Are you okay?
Quiero saber qué hice, no me quieren decir por qué me agarran.
I'm right here.
Stand over there.
I'm right here.
Quiero saber.
¿Qué es su nombre?
Javier Abreu. Quiero saber por qué me están a mí llevando.
Sí.
Cuando él dice que está enfermo de los riñones, a ellos no le importó que él dijera eso y simplemente se lo llevaron. Fue inhumano lo que pasó en ese momento.
Javier and his wife Carolina came to the US from the Dominican Republic 8 years ago. He had a kidney transplant in 2023 and needs to take drugs every day so his body doesn't reject the kidney. Carolina sent ICE his medication, but Javier didn't get it straight away.
Sí, hasta el siguiente día tuvo sus medicamentos y a las 1 de la tarde fue cuando se lo llevaron a Texas. Bueno, lo primero que yo pensé, bueno, ahora ¿qué pasará con nuestra familia? ¿Si será deportado? ¿Qué pasa?
Carolina is a trainee nurse in a hospital in Minnesota and has been granted residency.
Carola, no diga eso. Hello.
Javier broke immigration law by overstaying a tourist visa. He'd applied for residency before he was arrested and was awaiting a decision. Now he's in a detention center facing deportation. The couple's youngest daughter is a US citizen because she was born in America.
How are the girls doing?
Cuando ellas me preguntan que cuando regresa, pues les digo que todo va a estar bien. Antes de que todo eso estuviera pasando, bueno, nos sentíamos seguros aquí. Ahora mismo es una pesadilla total.
Under previous administrations, Javier would probably not have been detained while his application was being decided. But decisions often took years, and many Americans were angry about the rising number of immigrants. During his election campaign, President Trump promised voters a crackdown.
On my first day back in the White House, I will terminate every open border policy of the Biden administration, stop the invasion on our southern border, and begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. We have no choice.
His administration is trying to overturn the right of people born in America to immigrant parents to get automatic citizenship. ICE is getting an extra $75 billion of funding. And the number of ICE agents has more than doubled to 22,000. They've been sent to US cities to detain and deport some of America's estimated 14 million undocumented immigrants.
He is threatening to arrest everybody if we don't move. It's happening right now.
The rate of ICE arrests has quadrupled since President Trump's return to office. 400,000 people detained nationwide.
Let them go! Let them go! Let them go!
How many people does the Trump administration want to deport?
They've said anyone who's deportable is on the table.
How many people would you allow stay here who are currently designated as undocumented immigrants?
Zero. It is bad policy to provide amnesty because it just encourages more illegal immigration in the future.
There are roughly 14 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. To actually deport 4% of the US population, roughly 1 in every 24 people in the country, would cost hundreds of billions of dollars and impose enormous economic damage on the country.
But President Trump would say that he was elected with a mandate to do exactly what he's doing now.
I think when you look at what he said on the campaign trail, mass deportations was a term he never defined.
Last December, the Trump administration launched Operation Metro Surge. 4,000 federal agents were sent to Minnesota.
Please go home!
In early January, mother of 3, Renee Good, was shot dead while observing an ICE operation in Minneapolis. The Department of Homeland Security said the agents shot her in self-defense. At the time, President Trump also defended the shooting.
The woman was very violent. She's a very radical person. Very sad what happened.
The president stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers.
That is police brutality. They are hitting that observer.
17 days later, federal agents shot dead another observer in Minneapolis, intensive care nurse Alex Pretty. He had a permit to carry a concealed weapon and had a gun in his waistband. Close examination of the footage appears to show he was disarmed before he was shot. Once again, the Trump administration defended the killing.
This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
President Trump later said the 2 shootings shouldn't have happened and that his government's investigating. But the authorities in Minnesota are suing the federal government for failing to cooperate with the local police investigations.
Thank you for being here. We have people coming every day to remember Alex Pretty and Renee Good, because what they witnessed and what they saw, no one can tell them that they saw something else. This is a campaign of fear, and it's a campaign of making America whiter and anti-immigrant. And our neighbors here don't care for that and don't support it.
The shootings have divided America.
Donald Trump ran on removing the illegal immigrants.
Republicans are here tonight to hear from candidates who want to be the next governor of Minnesota. Some here blame protesters for provoking confrontation.
I mean, what are they doing there? They're just interrupting law enforcement. So, yeah.
It's a tragedy, but the 2 people who got killed are largely responsible for their own deaths. They were very foolish.
It's mid-February, and we're going to see one of the thousands of families who've been hiding in Minneapolis since the start of the ICE operation. They think they'll be targeted if they leave their home or show their faces on camera.
It's been scary. It's been a very difficult time, and there's a lot of fear and trauma in my family.
The couple, who we're calling Lisbeth and Alfonso, arrived from Mexico as children more than 20 years ago. They both applied to stay in the US, and she's been granted temporary residency.
In another time, this would have been okay and enough to live a normal life, but in this administration, it means that our process has no validation, we can be detained, and he can get deported at any time.
She was a community worker, and her husband works in construction and catering. They gave up work because of the ICE operation, but he's now gone back.
I begged him not to go to work, but he told me we still need to eat and pay the bills.
Their 2 children were born in America and are US citizens, but they're now being taught at home. Local schools have warned that ICE has been targeting families on the school run.
Sometimes I really want to come back to Mexico City and start a new life for us and like a freedom for my kids.
What is your single biggest fear?
that they see me handcuffed like I'm like a criminal. That in their little minds they have that image in their heads forever of seeing their parents handcuffed.
There are almost 5 million mixed-status families like this in the US, where some members of the family have the right to live in America and others could be deported.
Deportation would tear those families apart or disrupt them significantly. It may mean children have to depart the United States despite being US citizens or live with another family member.
Unfortunately, people have made decisions that to whether violate the law or continue to do so, and that means then it impacts others around them. People need to take responsibility for themselves and for decisions that they've made and the consequences.
The Trump administration says that ICE is going after the most serious criminals, the worst of the worst.
Boy, these are rough characters. These are all criminal, illegal aliens that, in many cases, they're murderers, they're drug lords.
What's your name?
While some of those arrested by ICE have been convicted of serious crimes, 70% don't have any convictions in the US at all.
Mass deportations for most people meant going after the bad guys. But there aren't that many so-called bad guys. Most undocumented immigrants live lives that, yes, are in violation of immigration law, but are otherwise fairly normal.
In Minnesota, there's an extensive network of volunteers helping people who are afraid to go out. This one food bank is making around 5,000 home deliveries a week. The scale of this operation tells you two things. One, the amount of people who are prepared to help, and two, the amount of people who need that help. Why do people need these food deliveries? Why are they afraid to go out?
Because they are afraid to be catch. Not all are undocumented. Even people with legal status, people with U.S. citizens, legal residents are afraid to do this, to go out and being detained. These are not the worst of the worst. These are the best of the best. These people, they have good things to offer to this country.
The volunteers here are nearly all white. They say that's because people of color have been arrested on food runs.
My dad, he got pulled over doing the same thing what we're doing. And in the 1 hour, they just transported him to Texas. The exact way, no hearing from his lawyer, no nothing.
After his arrest, their father spent 16 nights in detention before he was released. Ellie, whose 4 children are US citizens, came to America illegally 29 years ago, but was close to being granted permanent residency.
Pensé que era algo injusto que me estaban haciendo a mí, porque yo tenía mi licencia, mi permiso de trabajo, y nada más estaba esperando mi green card para estar bien todos. Pasado de las manos, de los pies, con una cadena, todos aquí, todos pasados. Desde aquí todo. Es como un criminal.
Community groups in Minnesota say they've trained 35,000 people how to safely monitor and observe ICE agents.
We are going to the hotel they've been staying at for at least the last month. I guarantee you there'll be at least one ICE vehicle there.
Madison is on patrol most mornings. But are you breaking the law by following them?
Absolutely not.
From a safe distance?
Yeah, from a safe distance, you are completely allowed to observe federal operations. I'm not allowed to impede them, but it's kind of hard to impede people from behind. Yep, not getting that one.
They've compiled their own database of vehicles they say are used by the agency.
I can see this one plate. I can run that one. That's confirmed ICE. 14 reports on that one.
This person here is filming us.
Yep.
Don't know why.
She's probably a nice agent.
Madison knows it can be dangerous work. A federal agent appeared to pull a gun on her when she drove past his vehicle in January. We've verified the footage. Are you conscious at all of the risks you're taking? I mean, 2 people, Alex Preddy, Rene Good, have been shot dead. Both were observers.
I am ready to die for this country to try and turn it into what it's supposed to be. I am well aware that that is a possibility, but I do a lot to try and make sure that does not happen to me.
Carolina is waiting for news about her husband. Javier Abreu, who needs daily medication following a kidney transplant, has been in detention for a week.
Estoy con las emociones mezcladas. Tengo la esperanza, pero a la vez me pregunto si no vuelve. Todo gira en mi cabeza, todas las preguntas, todos los pensamientos.
He's facing deportation, though he has no criminal record.
Hola, sí, buenos días.
Sí.
¿Tiene unos minutos para hablar ahorita?
Sí.
Ok, entonces a Javier el juez le aprobó una fianza de $12,000.
La abogada me dio buenas noticias y me dijo que sí, el juez aprobó la fianza de mi esposo. Son $12,000 que hay que pagar.
How do you get that?
No sé cómo, pero sí hay personas que nos están ayudando.
Feliz, feliz, feliz. Happy, happy, happy.
The number of migrants in detention centres reached 70,000 in January. That's almost double the number detained at the start of President Trump's second term. Many are held hundreds of miles from their homes. Javier was sent to a detention centre in Texas, close to the Mexican border. There it is, Camp East Montana, a vast complex of tents. It's currently the largest detention centre in the ICE network. 4,000 people can be held here. An ICE inspection found failings with medical provision, use of force, and keeping detainees safe. It was rated adequate overall. One detainee died in January after being restrained by guards. ICE said a second death that month was believed to be a suicide. Ellie was in Camp East Montana at the time.
Todo el color es blanco, todo es blanco. So, la gente se estresa mucho. No solamente yo, muchos compañeros estaban muy estresados. Se mira uno que está bien, pero no, eso ya pienso que es un trauma que va a quedar de por, no sé por cuánto tiempo, pero me afecta mucho a mí, a mi familia, a mi esposa, a mis niños.
This morning, I conducted an unannounced visit to the ICE detention facility in my district, Camp East, Montana.
We've had TB, tuberculosis outbreaks. We now have measles inside the facility. I was speaking to a man who had been detained. He had been so violently apprehended that the agents broke his arm. I could see the bone break. I asked him, did you alert the staff here at Camp East, Montana? And he said, I've been alerting them every day. I'm so desperate, he said, I just want to be deported so I can check myself into a hospital in my home country. The process, I believe, is intended to be cruel.
In a gun shop in nearby El Paso, there are very different views about the detention centers.
We can get the real conservative we've always deserved. That's what I think we're going to do this time.
This is a campaign event for Brandon Herrera. He's running for Congress in Texas's 23rd district.
There's something like 70,000 people currently in detention centers in America. That's a lot of people.
I would say that, if anything, I think the numbers are quite low. Our immigration system, as it is wrought with inefficiencies. I think at a certain point you can't just selectively decide which of your country's laws you're going to enforce.
Bottom line, you were 100% behind President Trump's immigration policies.
I'm willing to be there in D.C., try to help him in the legislature to make it, again, more aggressive, again, on the criminal illegals.
President Trump's supporters say you can see the success of his policies along the Mexican border. What the government calls border encounters have fallen dramatically. And over the past 9 months, not a single person stopped here has been allowed into the US.
While we were here filming, Border Patrol spotted 2 people trying to cross the border up there on the brow of that hill. They quickly arrested them and told us they would be sent straight back.
We're right on the border, where we're physically standing right now. We have been offering shelter to the refugees that have been crossing the border ever since Annunciation House came into existence in '78.
Ruben Garcia's charity in El Paso used to house around 1,000 people a night. Last night, there were just 18.
Does it say that the administration's immigration policy has worked, at least here in El Paso?
The numbers right now are very, very low. But this isn't the first time we have seen very, very low number. Do I see individuals suffering because of policies? Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's important for us to hear their stories and then to ask ourselves, is this who we want to be?
29 people died in detention centres last year, the highest number in 20 years. So far this year, 15 detainees have died. As part of its budget increase, ICE has $45 billion to spend on detention centres. The plan is to have space for 93,000 detainees by November. It includes converting these buildings near El Paso to hold around 8,000 people.
These warehouses in the desert and more planned across the country really illustrate the industrialization of this administration's immigration policy.
Immigration detention has long been part of immigration law. I have visited immigration detention centers, and I've observed the very high standards in terms of shelter, healthcare, dental, recreational, legal, access opportunities.
In the last year, you're saying you visited such centers?
No, not in the last year.
And in terms of the new policy of converting, repurposing warehouses for the detention of people, does that raise any alarm bells with you?
I'm sure they'll have to meet the same standards as other centers.
That the Trump administration believes that warehouses are where human beings can be kept for significant periods of time is demonstrative of the incredible cruelty and inhumanity.
What about people who did enter the country here illegally? Shouldn't they be straightforwardly deported?
If their only crime has been to walk across the border without documents, I think there should be a process for them to regularize their status and be able to remain here.
We wrote to ICE, they didn't respond. The White House said the president's highest priority has been the deportation of illegal alien criminals and that they had the most secure border in US history. They said new agreements with local police represent unprecedented levels of cooperation and that local officials should want to work with federal law enforcement to keep communities safe. President Trump has appointed a new Homeland Security Secretary and said that ICE could use a softer touch. But billions of dollars are still being spent on new facilities and manpower. ICE has already deported almost 500,000 people in the president's second term. President Trump's commitment to his policy of mass detention and deportation remains undiminished, meaning millions of people face a future defined by uncertainty and fear. It's a policy that many Americans still support. Back in Minnesota, the ICE operation ended after 4,000 arrests. Thousands of people are no longer in hiding, and one family is being reunited. After 13 days in detention, Javier Abreu has been released. A judge will decide later this year if he can stay in America with his family.
How was it where you were? No quisiera hablar de eso ahora realmente, porque no fue buena la experiencia.
What's it like to be with your family again?
Bien, porque son parte de mi vida. Feliz por el momento, pero ando con un grillete que no quería. Porque ahora estoy limitado.
Like millions of other undocumented immigrants, Javier could still be deported as President Trump delivers on his promise to crack down on immigration.
I've been called a baby killer, I've been spat on, had a death threat while walking along the street.
There's been a big rise in anti-Semitic hate in the UK over recent years.
We're getting it in schools, we're getting it in hospitals, we're getting it in workplaces. So for a lot of Jewish people, it feels like there's no escape from this.
Offensive, age-old stereotypes are being widely circulated.
You only have to look at social media for about 3 minutes to see the old tropes. Jews control the media. Jews control the world. Jews have all the wealth.
Protests against Israel's actions in Gaza have fueled fears about hate speech.
It's almost common ground now that it's okay to stir up hatred against Israelis. And of course, it's a very quick step from hating Israelis to Zionists to Jews.
Some Jews say things are now so bad they're even thinking of leaving the country.
I think of that day as a very terrible day that has left a very deep mark on the community.
6 months ago, I was in Manchester to report on a deadly attack at a synagogue.
Manchester police are saying they're at the scene of a reported stabbing.
As worshippers gathered for Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Jihad al-Shami, a man pledging allegiance to the Islamic State group, drove his car into a security guard before attacking people outside Heaton Park Synagogue with a knife.
Oh, there's very brave men on the day who tried to stop our attacker and succeeded in stopping our attacker in making entry into the synagogue.
We were holding onto the doors and the doors were buckling.
Yoni Finley was at the synagogue that day.
And I could see a very large, very angry person trying his best to break into the synagogue itself. He had a very large knife, incredibly large blade, and what looked like a bomb around his waist. I know he was shouting things. I think he was talking about Gaza and talking about this is for killing the babies.
When police shot the attacker dead, Yoni was hit by a stray bullet.
You were in no doubt when you saw him what this was about.
There's been so much hatred and so much anger towards the Jewish community for something that's happening thousands of miles away. You're allowed to criticize the government, you're allowed to criticize the country. But when the actions and the words and the hatred that you show spills over into actions like what happened at Heaton Park on that morning, that's a very different story.
2 members of the congregation were killed in the attack. Melvin Kravitz was stabbed. Adrian Dolby is believed to have been killed by the same police bullet that hit Yoni. 3 people were seriously injured.
Shoot him! I know those who died are still very much in your thoughts when you come here, aren't they?
Yes, very much so. So, yes, 2 seats sits vacant. So I can't walk in here without remembering them, and I want to remember them. But, yeah, their presence is always hit. And I know that the gap that their families are feeling is a huge and terrible one.
Greater Manchester is home to the 2nd largest Jewish community in the UK. It's my faith and community too. People here are feeling vulnerable.
A lot of Jewish community in general find ourselves questioning our security and how safe we are. We were living behind fences, our fences are now higher. Our defences are now more impregnable. And that's a good thing, we need it, we're grateful for it. But it's an expression of the fear which is there in the back of all of our minds.
Last year, there were around 10,000 religiously motivated hate crimes recorded by police in England and Wales. The Muslim community is more than 10 times larger than the Jewish community, and it was the single most targeted group, with a spike in Islamophobic hate crime after the Southport knife attack. Yet when it comes to per head of population, Jews experienced more than 8 times as many hate crime incidents as Muslims.
I wear my Star of David everywhere, pretty much. I always have. When I've been out and about, especially going into London, I've been spat at, I've been called a baby killer.
I've been called racist. I've had various sort of slurs like Zio.
This man started screaming and shouting at us, telling us that we were dirty Jews.
I've had a death threat where someone has said, oh, you all deserve to die, just for having my Star of David on.
As you walk around areas like this, are you observing people taking greater precautions?
So we're encouraging people to carry on living their lives, but to be more alert, more aware of the need for security.
Dave Rich is Director of Policy at the Community Security Trust, or CST, a charity providing security and advice to Jewish schools, organisations and synagogues across Britain. It also monitors and receives reports of anti-Semitism, prejudice against and hatred towards Jews. Last year, the CST recorded 3,700 incidents of malicious acts aimed at Jewish people or organisations.
It's happening across the country. It's affecting Jewish people of all different backgrounds and ages and status. So the whole community is feeling this. I think what's changed is that we're now seeing it in parts of society where it was never present and never a problem before. So we're getting it in schools, we're getting it in hospitals, we're getting it in workplaces. So for a lot of Jewish people, it feels like there's no escape from this.
In March, the government launched an independent review into anti-Semitism in schools and colleges in England. and there's concern about anti-Semitism on university campuses.
My name is Avital. At my university, there have been a number of protests with megaphones, have been shouting that Zionists should get off of our campus. I've walked past the student union where there's been chalk on the floor with phrases such as apartheid on our campus, get the Zionists off of our campus. For students to have to live in any level of fear about their identity being questioned by other students is horrible.
The government has also carried out a review into concerns about anti-Semitism and other forms of racism in the NHS.
My name's Laura, and I'm a midwife, and I work in the community in London. I think because there's been so much activism around sort of anti-Israel, anti-Zionist sentiment, that makes us feel very unsafe, it makes us feel very unwelcome. And there has been also direct personal, abuse online directed towards myself and other Jewish birth workers.
As concerns over anti-Semitism have grown, security around schools, synagogues and community centres has increased.
Going to synagogue, there will be police all around the area. Especially if it's a festival, police will walk you to the tube station to make sure that you're safe. There will be police inside the synagogue. And even though it's meant to make you feel safe, it doesn't.
Increased security hasn't stopped attacks spreading fear throughout the Jewish community. Last week, 2 London synagogues and the former premises of a Jewish charity were targeted in attempted arson attacks. It followed an earlier incident at a Jewish medical charity, Hatzalah. The volunteer-run emergency service provides free care for anyone in the area. 4 ambulances were destroyed.
A massive, massive blast.
I can see where the ground is scorched and the glass still here.
Yeah, what you're looking at really is the charred remains.
3 men and a teenager have been charged with arson.
This is now on our doorstep. This is bang smack in the middle of a densely populated Jewish community, and it was never like that before. What was happening in the Middle East kind of stayed in the Middle East. I think what's happened since perhaps October the 7th, I think since that time, those barriers are down, and now a Jew in Jerusalem is as vulnerable as a Jew in London or anywhere else in the world.
The CST says reports of anti-Semitic incidents in the UK rise in the aftermath of significant attacks, like Heaton Park. And the mass shooting on Australia's Bondi Beach, where 15 people were killed at a Hanukkah celebration. On October the 7th, 2023, Hamas attacked Israel, killing around 1,200 people and taking 251 hostage. The war in Gaza that followed has seen more than 72,000 Palestinians killed by Israeli military action, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Tens of thousands, including Jews, have taken to the streets to protest against Israeli action in Gaza and show support for Palestinians. Some chants and placards have left many British Jews feeling under threat. According to some protesters, Globalise the Intifada is a call for an uprising against injustice. But for many Jews, it's seen as a call for violent action against them, wherever they are.
So I was at Waterloo Station with a friend of mine, and a massive amount of pro-Palestinian protesters came to the station, and they just started screaming and waving flags and shouting about the Intifada. I was completely terrified, and I ran to the back of the bookstore with my friend and just couldn't leave.
There are plenty of people who go on those marches who would say they are absolutely not anti-Semitic. What do you say to them?
I'm sure a lot of people who go on these marches, they're there for human rights reasons, they're there because they want peace. But they're also on a march where there are other people who are expressing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. They're claiming Jews or Zionists control the government. They're supporting Hamas. They're calling for intifada. They're calling for armed struggle, violent resistance and so on. People in the Jewish community look at this, and that's what leads people to feel real fear about the marches as a whole.
The Palestine Solidarity Campaign and the Stop the War Coalition have helped organise many of the marches.
Defend the right to protest.
Two of their leaders, who were recently convicted of breaching protest conditions, have previously given evidence to Parliament.
I think there's a tiny minority of people who have had placards that we challenge. And we have an operation with our hundreds of stewards to try and make sure that anyone who does this, anyone who holds placards or flags or anything that could be construed as liable to be inciting hatred or of prescribed organisations are talked to and are removed. And that's been a very effective operation.
Israel's a country like any other with a government and an army, and of course, as such, should be subject to scrutiny. But what we hear too often is Jewish people in Britain being held responsible for what the Israeli government has done, and that's where people's criticism or hostility or opposition to Israel translates into harassment of Jewish people, blaming Jewish people.
The Palestine Solidarity Campaign said in a statement endorsed by the Stop the War Coalition that it unequivocally condemns anti-Semitism, Islamophobia and all forms of discrimination, and it rejects any suggestion that its marches constitute harassment of Jewish people. Senior Rabbi Julia Neuberger believes criticism of Israel can be used as a smokescreen for anti-Semitism.
There are people who say that accusations of anti-Semitism are a way of stifling criticism of Israel.
There are people saying that, and sometimes, only sometimes, they may be even right. But mostly what happens is people use the cover of criticising the actions of the Israeli government to be anti-Semitic. And that's where the confusion lies.
Since 2023, more than 3,500 people have been arrested on pro-Palestinian protests and marches, nearly 3,000 of them in London. Jonathan Hall is the government's independent reviewer of terrorism and state threats legislation.
I think the evidence is in now. There is open hatred on the streets.
So the Jewish community is right to ask for that to be stopped?
I wrestle with this point because I can imagine things that I would want to protest about all the time. But I also think now, applying the precautionary principle, I think they are right to ask for society to step in and do something to stop that hatred.
There's also concern about anti-Semitism being spread online. The Centre for Countering Digital Hate says its research shows some social media platforms have become hubs of anti-Semitism, where algorithms normalise hatred of Jews, spread conspiracy theories, and glorify the Nazis with little or no accountability. Daniel Finkelstein's grandmother was murdered by the Nazis. His grandfather set up the Wiener Holocaust Library.
To see the same things that produced the Holocaust, the same ideas, the conspiracy thinking, the sort of taunting of Jewish people, that is very disturbing.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
This is far-right political commentator Nick Fuentes.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really cool.
When Daniel Finkelstein decided to call him out, the American then turned on him, mocking the death of his family in the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were murdered.
This old British guy is saying, me mom got killed by Hitler.
Because he
me
doesn't
dad
find
got
it
killed
funny
by...
when you say Hitler's very
I don't care.
I
don't care.
Others then created more online content based on what Fuentes had said, even turning it into songs.
Me mom died in a harlot. Me pa was killed by Stalin.
There were thousands of messages, and it went on for day after day after day, and it's in everything that I do or say online. So, and things that have nothing to do with politics will be suffused with messages about the Holocaust or about Jews.
What has the online world done to anti-Semitism?
And the thing that's happened is the growth of a media that hasn't got any gatekeepers, so the spread of racism from one person to another, the spread of Holocaust denial, which you might otherwise have had to sell someone under the counter and you couldn't admit to and was therefore quite small, that becomes much easier. It's much easier for niche opinions to reach mass audiences.
You only have to look at social media for about 3 minutes to see the old tropes. So the tropes about Jews control the media, Jews control the world, Jews have all the wealth. You know, it's that echo chamber, echo chamber, echo chamber. Once you've read it on social media, it must be right. So the tropes about Jews are repeated so people begin to believe it.
These tropes would play a role in a violent kidnapping. In 2024, Itai Kashti, a London-based Israeli music producer, received an email from what looked like a record company inviting him to a songwriting camp in the Welsh countryside. When he arrived, the taxi driver helped him in with his luggage.
So we went into the cottage. Inside there waited 3 men, all masked up, so I couldn't see their faces or know who they are. And they started hitting me straight away. It was like a horror film. They said to me that they will hurt me even more if I try to escape. And then they used these handcuffs on me to kind of keep me there.
Itai's abductors wrongly believed because he was Jewish, he was rich, and they planned to extort money from him or his family. But their plan failed. When Itai was left alone, he managed to free himself and escape.
Went out of the cottage and I was covered in blood and my shirt was completely torn. I was frightened to death.
The taxi driver, who'd escaped during the struggle, alerted police.
We were under arrest on suspicion of GBH, of kidnap and unlawful imprisonment.
Sentencing Itai's 3 attackers, the judge concluded they were motivated by racial and religious hostility.
There's a lot of prejudice against Jewish people in general and Israel in particular. And people may like or not like their politics the same way I don't like the politics in Israel. You know, it's fine. You can like or dislike the politics in a country, but it doesn't mean you need to judge the individual people that come out of it on that basis.
Cases like Itai Kashti's are extreme and rare. But there are fears that anti-Semitism is being normalised, and that in turn could pave the way for serious violence and even terror.
There's a principle in national security called the precautionary principle. No one can say for sure that any particular protest or march or expression of anti-Semitism in the public sphere has led to a particular attack, but there's obviously a coincidence now between an extraordinary amount of anti-Semitism in the public domain and those really, really grievous attacks. I think that hatred in the public sphere towards Jews has made them more acceptable as a target for terrorism.
Counter-terror police say they're seeing an increase in activity against the Jewish community.
We've definitely seen a rise in both anti-Semitic hate crime and how that plays through to counter-terrorist activity as well. And the rhetoric that comes from ISIS and other terrorist organisations shows a clear intent to target Jewish communities.
In February, 3 men were jailed for a total of 69 years for their part in an Islamic State group-inspired terror plot to target the Jewish community in North Manchester.
It would have been an absolutely devastating attack, probably one of the worst the UK has seen for many, many years.
In January 2024, a march was held in Manchester to protest against anti-Semitism. Yoni Finley, who a year later would be injured in the attack on Heaton Park Synagogue, was on the march.
It was a march against anti-Semitism, but it was a very peaceful march. We weren't there to have a go at anybody, to be angry. If you look at the flags that were displayed, there were Israeli flags, yes, but there were also British flags because we are British Jews.
The gang plotted to attack the next march.
2 individuals were seeking to buy automatic firearms with the sole intent of going to crowded and highly populated Jewish areas of Manchester and killing people.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of being a terrorist. Do you understand the caution?
The gang was stopped by an undercover officer who'd infiltrated the group. Following the attack on the Heaton Park Synagogue, the Home Secretary questioned whether the laws in England and Wales were sufficient. Some changes were already underway.
A bill is currently going through Parliament to give police more powers to protect places of worship and monuments. An independent review is also being carried out into public order and hate crime laws. It's looking at the balance between the right to protest on the one hand and the need to protect communities on the other. It's due to be completed by the end of May. But there are those who believe that existing laws are adequate. The challenge is for the police to enforce them.
I think that there has been undue caution in using the law as it currently is. I think you cannot understate the public interest in removing real, violent, hostile anti-Semitism from the public sphere. I say that from the position of national security. I mean, there are lots of other reasons to do it as well, but because of the potential impact on targeting of Jews in terrorist attacks and also recruitment by hostile states of proxy actors, it seems to me the public interest is so high that the police and the Crown Prosecution Service need to see this as a real priority.
We work very hard with Crown Prosecution Service. Where people do break the law, we will put all of our investigative effort into dealing with that, wherever that law breaking might sit.
It has been said to us that if those marches had been policed more firmly earlier on, that the Jewish community would not be feeling under threat in the way they are now.
We are acutely aware of the concerns they have, the fears they hold. We work incredibly hard to try and get that balance right.
It's been very difficult for the police themselves. What do you take issue with? Where is the borderline? Where people are feeling threatened doesn't necessarily mean you should inhibit freedom of speech. When it's real hate directed at people, that is clearly hate speech, and I think there we ought to act and act quickly.
Since the attacks of October the 7th and Israel's response, community leaders say it's becoming harder to have dialogue between faiths.
Interfaith work has become incredibly more difficult, and it's a shame. I think a lot of Jews are quite frightened of making those relationships with Muslims and Christians, and there's increasing nervousness, unwillingness, unhappiness, particularly amongst Muslims, but to some extent amongst Christians too, about entering this dialogue.
One of the beauties of our society was that we believed that we had the right to have hugely different opinions, to disagree entirely over very fundamental things, and yet still to do so with respect and with tolerance. I think we're losing that as a society as a whole.
A survey for the Institute for Jewish Policy Research suggests around 1 in 5 British Jews are thinking about leaving for Israel in the next 5 years. Rabbi Walker is determined to stay put.
Whilst recognising that things are not okay, I am relentlessly positive, and I choose to believe that the good will do what needs doing, and that society will become a better place. I hope and I pray that right.
With instability continuing in the Middle East, faith leaders say it's okay to disagree and to do so passionately, but there should be no place for hate directed towards anyone.